Mr. President, this week, as the Senate moves forward with consideration of Wall Street reform legislation, I'm optimistic that legislation will be passed that reforms our financial system and prevents those who nearly brought down the economy from ever being able to do so again. As we have heard many times over the last several weeks, the bill creates a mechanism to monitor the economy for nationwide trends and risky patterns that could lead to problems. It establishes a consumer watchdog dedicated to identifying and preventing lending trends that are harmful to consumers. In addition to preventing future bailouts, the bill also requires that most financial speculation be done in the open, while addressing the underlying problem that allowed banks to go casino crazy in the first place. It also brings derivatives in the transparent marketplace. I believe all these changes will make American financial system more transparent, accountable, and responsive to future risks. It has been discouraging to see some members and special interests opposed to these changes. In fact, I believe it is hard to argue against these reforms with a straight face. Yet, those against reforming Wall Street have been doing just that, asserting that making markets fair and transparent will somehow hurt our economy. These reforms will help, not hurt, American consumers, small banks, and small businesses. As I said before, our community banks in South Dakota and across the nation have acted responsibly. It was the actions of large, interconnected financial institutions that endangered our economy and received bailouts. The bill eliminates that likelihood that the government would once again be forced to throw billions of dollars at Wall Street or run the risk of bringing down our entire economy. The community banks in South Dakota and across the country are a vital part of our economy as they reinvest money back into the communities they serve. This legislation will help community banks since it levels the playing field between banks and non-bank financials such as mortgage lenders. In addition, the bill fills many regulatory gaps, helping solve the problem of charter shopping, meaning financial institutions will no longer be able to choose the regulator they think will be the friendliest. I would also like to see the legislation go further in some areas, such as the registration of private equity and venture capital with the SEC, in addition to hedge fund registration. I also believe the legislation fills important regulatory gaps relating to insurance regulation. This legislation establishes the Office of National Insurance and gives this office the ability to negotiate international agreements, a task that is currently a struggle for our country in a global marketplace. These provisions will give us a better picture of what is happening in the national and international industry, something we do not have now. We should resist efforts to take away authority from the Office of National Insurance. This bill has had substantial input from Republicans and Democrats. As this legislation process moves forward, I hope that bipartisan language on investor protection can be retained, that we can find common ground on a national preemption and state AG enforcement, and that additional good ideas from both sides of the aisle can be incorporated into this legislation through the amendment process. I believe all members of this body want to support bipartisan legislation to reform Wall Street. But as we seek bipartisan consensus, we should assess all amendments from a Main Street common sense perspective. South Dakota's farms, ranches, and businesses operate with transparency and accountability. It's time for that same transparency and accountability to be extended to Wall Street. Taxpayers, consumers, and businesses all across our nation have been affected by the gambling of Wall Street. The fallout of Wall Street's recklessness has affected all of us, whether it is job loss, foreclosure, loss of retirement funds, or decreased access to a loan or other type of credit. Nearly 2 years have passed since the financial crisis. It's time to move forward and fix our failed system of financial services regulation. A young South Dakotan was in my office last week and said that he thought this bill represents South Dakota's values because he was raised with a value that you should be careful with your money and even more careful with someone else's money. That's something that Wall Street forgot. Any legislation that passes this body must make our markets safer, better protect consumers, create a level playing field for industry, and remind Wall Street that our nation's economy is not something they are free to gamble away. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Senator from Connecticut.
Mr. President, I just want to say to my friend how much I appreciate his involvement and support and effort over the past many, many months that we've worked on this area since the collapse of our economy back in the fall of, well, beginning earlier than that, actually, as we witnessed early in 2007, the mortgage crisis occurring across the country. Senator Johnson has been tremendously helpful and valuable. He's my seatmate on the Banking Committee. We've been sitting next to each other in that committee for the past 3 years and working on these issues together. It brought great value to this debate and discussion, contributed significantly to the product before us, and I wanted to thank him for it. We've got some work to do, obviously, in the next number of days on this bill, but it's a good bill, and I appreciate his comments about how it's been a bill crafted not by one member, not by a chairman of a committee, but by the group of us on that committee, Democrats as well as Republicans, who contributed to this bill. And so I thank him for his work.